So, what's the last thing that I want to do? Well, I want to change slightly our definition of the wall. So I'm going to say, here's our wall thing right now. And all of our pieces are essentially this wide. So like if I were to go to here, where we explode all our pieces out, they all roughly have the same thickness here. So what would be nice is if we could kind of make layers in this direction, in the z direction. And we can do that. So I would actually still like to leverage our instancing by still using essentially these pieces. I'm not going to create new pieces. So what I will do is I'm going to say this depth is fine. The depth of the wall is fine, but let's make it in two layers. So essentially, let's make the depth be half as much. So there you go, 0.05. And then by the time we get to here, let's move it forward by that depth amount. So I'm basically going to say, hey, depth, move it forward, channel reference. So you can see that we got that one now. Merge them together, like so. And you can see we have this. Now that's, of course, that's not as good as our bevel from before. So not only are we going to move it forward, we'll also need to scale it. So we'll take the size or the depth thing here again, and we'll say we'll put it here. We'll put it here. And we don't want the scale to be 0.05. We actually want it to be 1 minus that. Because as you'll see, 0.95, 0.95. And we need to move it up a little bit on the pivot to the actual, let's see, channel reference times, oops. Because right now the scale is being applied from the bottom here, from the origin. So we need to have it apply from the center of it, which is going to be, halfway up, which is going to be the width times 0.5. And there you go. So now we're back to the same size, but now it's made up of essentially twice as many pieces. And as usual, we can see, because we haven't rotated it, all the pieces are kind of they're going to be stuck together like this. That's not going to be so interesting. So we want to rotate that. Let's just rotate it, let's just flip it upside down around the z-axis, which is the thing that goes through it. So there we go. So now it's flipped upside down. So like these pieces here, this little thing, I can see it's on the other side over there, so they won't be stuck to each other. Let's kill that visualization again. So now the wall is going to be 358. So now we just doubled our sim, but the sim's still going pretty fast, so that should be fine. So we put it all together. If we look at our clustering, actually, we're going to have way more constraints now. You'll notice that, let's say if I made like a clip. Let's make a clip here real quick, just as a nice visualization. I'm going to move it up by 1. You can see that we have this kind of like double, we have this wall here. We have the 2 layers of it. Well, actually, I'll even make another clip. I'll move it up by like 1.1, and I'll flip it around just so we can see it. This is like a cross section now of our building. So our whole building is being made out of constraints. All these little pieces. It's got these thick walls. There's pieces on the inside, the outside of the walls. It's all over the place. It's all coming together. So that's a nice little visualization trick there. We don't even need to change anything in terms of our pieces because it's the same pieces from before. We don't have any more pieces in our actual, we don't have any more unique pieces. We just took our assembled ones and doubled them the way that we've been doubling and tripling everything down here. So to prove that to ourselves, if I were to disable our cache, so here's our sim, the first frame of the sim. It's 51,000 primitives, or rather 51,000 fragments now, aka 51,000 pieces, or whatever you want to call it. And we can see the instancing still works. Because the transform thing that we did here, or rather what we did here, it includes scale. So even though we scaled our pieces, so up until now we've been translating and rotating our pieces, but scale will also be taken into account here. So everyone's happy. So let's see what we get from this. And I'll say, let's move right. And so this actually looks wrong because from when I have this node on, it's reading in that cache. That's why it looks wrong here. If we turn this off, it'll bypass that. But we are going to want to save this. So let's make a new sim version. Call 2. Now it has nothing to read. And let's save it, because in the next chapter we're going to want to have a big sim to work on when we replace all 50,000 of these pieces with high resolution, intricate looking pieces. So without further ado, save the disk. So now that we're up to twice as many pieces, I mean, to go to 55,000 pieces, it's, you know, it took a little longer to sim, it takes a little bit longer to play blast too, but I mean, the results are worth it. It's so much more detail now. We have all these thin pieces. We also have some that are like maybe twice as wide, where we have the front and the back. You kind of see the cracking and things along it. We kind of also got back to that cool shape that I liked before, where we have this big corner falling down and then dissolves as it hits the ground there too. So there's so much cool stuff going on. The only major problem I would say is these explosions are huge. Apparently 400. I know we've been going back and forth between 200 and 400 this entire time, but we might have to go back to 200 again. But anyway, but as a proof of concept, the sim definitely works and it looks cool. And in the next chapter, we're going to replace these pieces with high-res pieces that'll have more jagged outlines and internal bumps and stuff that we aren't getting right now with our plain Voronoi. And before I forget, we're going to use this cache for the next chapter. But before we forget, let's just let's move that force back down to 200. So go back into your forces geometry node, and there it is, 200. Cool. All right.